Neha, you were standing up for this cause of H4EAD and many other immigrant causes, not just after you got your green card, but even before that, as an immigrant, as a person on a temporary visa or an H4 yourself. कभी डर नहीं लगा?
बहुत डर लगा यार. One time especially when I got featured by the BBC and NPR, I was like, holy cow. You know, it's so easy to just Google things up these days, right? And what if people come and, do something to me, right? Or my family, right? Like, wo dar hamesha tha. Plus, I was getting trolled really badly on Twitter back then for speaking up and all of that. So yes, dar lagta tha, but I'm a Delhi wali, so I have a very thick skin.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, Neha, like, where did this advocacy kind of instinct come from? Like, was it a childhood thing?
Oh, never thought about it in that way. I don't know. Maybe I just have this innate sense in me to just ask questions. That's why I probably even became a journalist. I'm the only journalist in my entire family till date.
Wow.
Right? So maybe I started asking questions and then I couldn't find answers to them. And then if I didn't find answers, why isn't anybody talking about it? And then one thing led to another. And we met like-minded people, ended up creating Skilled Immigrants in America, and did what we had to do, what was necessary. Because for once, I am not the kind who can just sit home, हाथ पे हाथ रख के कि अरे अब तो देखा जाएगा जो होगा. No, I can't do that.
There are a lot of people who are struggling on the H4 through a lot of mental turmoil. What's your advice to them?
Don't think of H4 as a curse. Think of it as a blessing. Anything that you have been wanting to do but couldn't do because, you had a certain job, you had certain other expectations that you had to take care of. Use this time to figure that side hustle. Who knows? You could be the next person on the billboard because of your photography skills. Who knows that?
Neha, you won't believe that is so true because see, we run this program for Smart Green Card, right? So overall, we help people evolve their profiles. Like, so they have to put in the work. It's not like they cannot put in the work and just aram se like get a green card. You won't believe the number of people who come to us saying, "I'll give you money, do everything for me." It simply doesn't work that way. We send them away. It's like, why are you outsourcing this to us? We are here to help you hold your hand through the journey in a way that if you are truly interested in it and you are able to evolve your profile to a point where, you can show that you have done some impactful work, great. We are there to help you. We will support you along the journey and it will take about a year. But then if you're trying to kind of just simply outsource it and effectively purchase a green card, that is not legal and it's not how it even works.
Exactly. I mean, it's that mindset that we were talking about earlier also, right? It's this mindset that, hey, I have the money and I'm privileged. Okay, I have the H1B. I have been living in the United States of America on a golden mine. I don't know what that gold mine looks like though. And I'm throwing the money at you. Please get this done for me. That's not how it happens. Our people need to really come out of this mindset. You have to do your own work. You will have to put in the work. Fight for your rights. Even if an RFE comes in for your case, you need to be on top of your case to understand. Even an attorney can forget because I've seen this. So I've worked in immigration firm also, right? So I know how, attorneys, thankfully the attorneys that I've worked with, they're all first-time immigrants. So they know the chaos that goes into it and they're all very, diligent about it. But there are cases where I've seen because of the workload, an attorney has forgotten because nobody followed up on that, on that case. I literally, last week, an F1 visa holder reached out to me asking me for help because they got a job on day one CPT, right? And they did not share their I-120 with the employer because no one told, I-20 is that?
Yeah,
Sorry,
I-20,
I'm mixing that up. Right, I-20 with the employer. Because no one told them. I'm like, no one's going to tell you to do this.
Yep.
When you sign those documents, you need to know what you're signing. Read everything. Be self-aware. Do the research. And this is the mental turmoil I'm talking about.
Yep.
Because you think money can buy everything, not in the US. It will not.
Yep. Yeah. Can we go back and kind of, because people will be very interested, they don't know what happened in behind the scenes, whether it is with the OMB or whether it's in all these efforts, lobbying efforts, which actually led to the creation of H4EAD, and you were behind the scenes all along the way. Do you have any interesting stories from your entire push for the H4EAD, how it happened? What kind of reactions did you have to face? Because I'm sure this entire journey wasn't pretty.
No. So, I can definitely talk about the stories when we went to the OMB office, right? And I feel like our folks are the sweetest folks, very hardworking folks, but, they're just super entitled. Okay. Some of these women who I took with me, and they are all coming from tier 1 cities in India. Okay. But they'll be like, Neha, oh my God, I can't drive on a highway. Neha, oh my God, I don't know how to, write a letter. I'll ask my husband to write a letter. I'm like, what world are you living in? And how are you? And these are people who are scientists, who are researchers. Okay. I had, for the OMB meeting that we had, and it was incidentally on March 8th that year. Okay. International Women's Day. I rented a car out. I think it was the biggest car I could find that day.
Mm-hmm.
I took 8 women with me in that car, and I drove all the way to DC from New Jersey to make sure that these women don't lose out the opportunity to go and meet the Office of Management and Budget and put their case out there.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these women have been in pharma. They created their own research centers. They have done incredible game-changing work for the US, right? And such incredible stories. I had a story of a critical care nurse from the ICU. I once ran a video campaign, and these nurses would, and these people don't go home for like 3 days at a stretch. She still found time to create a 1-minute video and send it to me so that we could play it out on social media.
Wow.
Okay. And there are just hundreds and thousands of such stories, Simon. But I feel like this whole sense of suffering, yet feeling a little entitled, there's no balance in between.
Yeah.
There's no meeting in between. And I feel if our community could be a little bit more empathetic toward this situation and not close the door and learn how to speak up for this issue, we would be in a much better space today.
Yeah.
Right? Sadly, that's not happening enough.
Yeah, speaking of community and the generation of political interest, so if you look at the UK or if you look at Canada, for example, there are enough Indians there, and probably like second, third, fourth generation Indians maybe that are, and generally their population sizes are also less. So they end up contributing to a major chunk of their demographic pool, which automatically then becomes a political interest matter because, you have enough of a voter base there. So you need to make sure that their agenda items are catered to, and it becomes a political issue that needs to get addressed at the legislation level or policy level or whatever. I think the biggest issue until now is that Indians are a decent size of the US population. It's not like a negligible size where, it's politically irrelevant. However, it is this tendency to just, matlab, chup chap raho, kuch mat karo, that type of a thing that has evolved to not, and whatever Indians do, they kind of are fine doing it anonymously. And that's the reason you have all these Reddit threads, right? Like endless Reddit threads. Ab ye sare baat karne wale real life mein kahan hai? Right?
True.
Why?
True.
Why
keyboard warriors, I like to call them, right? They are all keyboard warriors. They'll all be behind their X name, the name on X. And nobody will really show up. We've had multiple rallies on the Hill. And one of our most important rally, we had 600 people show up with their kids on February 8th. Okay, one of the coldest days, right? So we've had success stories. I'm not saying we've not had success stories, but I think it's not happening enough. There are people who've done peaceful protests all over the US, right? And we've been very instrumental in making all of that happen. Just creating the right kind of noise, right? Because we also don't want to be labeled as someone who's a miscreant,
Disruptive.
someone
Yeah.
exactly right, who's not helping the overall cause, which is also a thin line, and especially in today's times that we are in, like this day in 2025, we have to be very careful of there's this sense of fear in the air. But I still feel that what is your right ask is what you should be asking for. You should not shy away from speaking up about your issues. Back in 2021, I still did not have the green card, and this was peak of COVID, right? And I had a fatal accident. I was recovering from that, partially immobile, and my husband had to travel to India because my father-in-law was sick. Sadly, he passed away. And there was no way for him to come back because we did not have stamping. And we had not traveled to India in 8 years, fearing the whole stamping situation.
Wow.
And there are so many other people. I know people who haven't traveled in 15 years to India because of the stamping related issues, right? And we were like, okay, because once you get 221G, there is no, you don't know.
I've gotten that.
That loop, right? That infinite loop you fall into. Anyways,
for my F1 also, for whatever reason.
Okay. Oh my God. So my husband got stuck in India. So if you Google New Jersey man stuck in India, that's my husband.
Yeah, I came across a lot of those articles actually, but only after you told me that it was your husband, that's when I realized, oh, okay, like it's a deja vu moment.
Yes. Listen, nobody came to help me at that time. I was homebound, peak of COVID, with 2 kids in the house, partially immobile, did not know what to do. But thankfully, all these years of advocacy came as a blessing, because I knew where to knock the door and how to find those people and what to also tell them. Because if I were just mumbling a few words, they would lose interest. I had to be very strategic about what I had to tell them. Thankfully, one media house picked it up, a local media house, New Jersey 12 picked it up. From New Jersey 12, Fox 5 picked it up. From Fox 5, ABC 7 picked up. From ABC 7, CNN picked up. We were on CNN Morning Time with Brianna twice.
Wow.
Once while my husband was in India, and then second time when he came back. We had a press conference literally in our backyard with at least 20 media outlets right there, right? Talk of a radio station, talk of a podcast. We were on it, talking about it. And even in that moment of agony, moment of personal loss, I chose to speak about green card backlog. Okay? Because people just don't know media, and you don't get these chances over and over again. So whatever 30 seconds of speaking time I had, I just grabbed it and I'm like, I have to speak about green card backlog. People need to know, mainstream media needs to know what green card backlog is all about. And I think that's what we have to continuously keep doing, whatever avenues you get, whether it's your neighbor. And trust me, these avenues will start opening for you once you start speaking up. Just start sharing your story. There is no shame or embarrassment in it. You have not done anything wrong. You've just become part of the system. You followed it to the T, right? But this is something that is beyond you.
Yeah, I've traveled to some of the most conservative places in America. The Heartland, the Midwest. I needed to travel a lot for my work. And this is not your typical Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas City, Kansas type of a heartland. Yeah. This is like a cornfield in the middle of Iowa. Right? Yeah. Des Moines, Illinois, that kind of a place, essentially a very rural place. And whenever I meet people there, when they talk to us in an individual capacity, they are able to resonate. They are able to be like, hey, yeah, we want you here. We see the value that you're bringing. And I'm not even talking about the educated people. I'm also talking about like the factory workers there who think that their jobs are threatened by immigrants. They tell me, after we are, spent a week together and stuff, that's when they tell me, hey, looks like you're doing some great work. Because I work in factory automation, robotics and stuff like that. We see that your work is making our work easier because you're designing these robots, putting them in. So it helps us stay away from the more harmful side of the work. It has improved safety significantly. So they are able to resonate with us in a one-on-one capacity when they see it being demonstrated in front of them. But then when they learn about us or what is portrayed about us by the media, that's when the issue occurs, right? It's where, everyone is painted with the same brush. And there, I haven't met a single person who said, hey, what the heck are you doing here? Get out.
Exactly. Yeah. So agree with you, Simon. And that's exactly the narrative I have witnessed when I've spoken to my white friends, when I've spoken to members of Congress, and everybody has always assured us, hey, it's a very low hanging fruit. It's not an issue at all. This should get done. But, and then that's where we get stuck. Back in 2020, was it? I think it was 2020. We were fighting for this bill, HR 1044, right? We were fighting for HR 1044. It passed the House, okay? After almost 10 long years of like pushing for it.
That's how old the bill is, 10 years?
I think we in one way, shape or form, maybe it took a newer form closer to when it got introduced to, but the language kind of remains same. Fairness for highly skilled immigrant. It just keeps taking different names, but the crux of the matter is same, right? So HR 1044, it got introduced on the House. It had maximum number of supporters back then, it was one of those bills. And it passed the House, went to the Senate. Senate introduced some amendments, and it was again to be brought in on the House floor. Guess what? That was the last day of the House hearings. The bill was never brought on the House floor. And just like that, poof, it vanished.
So these are because of those riders that got inserted, like, hey, okay, sneak these 5 things in.
Sad reality is it takes just one member of Congress to stand up, or senator to just stand up and say, I don't like this. They don't even have to give a reasoning behind it. Sometimes these senators do not, like from deep red states, they don't even understand sometimes how it is different from a diversity visa. And they would think, hey, I oppose the diversity visa. This is not diversity visa.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So it's crazy. It's just crazy.
Neha, you brought up an interesting point. 94% of H4 holders are women, which makes this issue a larger women's issue as well. It brings that color into it rather than just an immigrant issue. Now, I'm not a woman, and for the most part, I can empathize, but I cannot necessarily feel what a person in those shoes would feel. But you are someone who has gone through that, and I'm sure you also have people in your broader network who you can empathize with as a woman. Can you walk us through some of the pain points? Where all do people struggle in their day-to-day lives, and also for their long-term career goals and stuff like that? Like, how is this a woman's issue from a day-to-day life perspective?
Okay. It definitely is a woman's issue, but let me think of it. Let's not call it a woman's issue for 1 second. Okay. You told me you are into robotics and AI, right? You create all these designs, right? Today, if you were told, Simon, you don't have work authorization anymore. You're not working. You can't do anything related to your expertise. And you don't know when you'll get that work authorization. And just like that, 8 years pass by. What do you think is going to happen to your career?
Forget about my career. My mind is going to get so screwed, and I'm going to be so underconfident in myself eventually that, hey, I have all these capabilities, but how is the world using it?
Exactly. Okay. And also remember this, when these women come on a dependent visa, an H4 like that, because they don't have the earning purchasing power, they don't have bank accounts. Sometimes they can't even get bank loans in their own name. They have to find a guarantor or someone else who can sign on their behalf, right? And what if the spouse doesn't want to? Or what if the spouse himself is going through a lot of pain, because being on H1 visa is also not easy, right? What if they don't have that financial capability that woman can go back to school and continue studying until they get work authorization? So a lot of women, go on F1 visa, and then take that route, come on H1 and then take that route. But not everybody has that kind of money or resources or even a chance. Think of women with kids. I mean, if you're a single person earning, and if you're living in, say, San Francisco on single person earning, how are you going to make ends meet? How will you be able to sponsor your wife's education, plus manage daycare, plus other expenses, it just piles up. Practically, sometimes it just doesn't make sense, right? So it really impacts confidence. It really impacts, I think, as a person, you undergo massive change because of that, sometimes negatively, but not everything is lost. You can still continue to volunteer, right? I started when I landed here, I didn't know what to do. And back in India, when I was a journalist, I was a lifestyle journalist, used to cover a lot of film festivals in India. So I landed in the US, and thankfully I found a film festival that happens here, that they needed someone who could help them with just, someone who could go out there in the market and get things done for them on the ground. And as a volunteer, I was able to get that done because I know how a film festival works in the background, right? What behind the scenes there. So what I'm saying, I'm just giving you one example, right? But there are so many other ways you can go and just volunteer, and you can, but how long can you continue volunteering, right? Finances come into picture. If today, you know what's happening with the markets, you know what's happening with inflation here. If you have to do anything out of your normal routine, you would be stretching yourself thin. That is the life a H-4 visa holder continues to live.
Wow. Yeah. I see that generally speaking, you said that people need to stand up for themselves, advocate for this issue, which you've been doing quite a bit. I'm curious to know, Neha, like, where did this advocacy kind of instinct come from? Like, was it a childhood thing?
Oh, never thought about it in that way. I don't know. Maybe I just have this innate sense in me to just ask questions. That's why I probably even became a journalist. I'm the only journalist in my entire family till date.
Wow.
Right? So maybe I started asking questions, and then I couldn't find answers to them. And then if I didn't find answers, why isn't anybody talking about it? And then one thing led to another. And we met like-minded people, ended up creating Skilled Immigrants in America, and did what we had to do, what was necessary. Because for once, I am not the kinds who can just sit home, हाथ पे हाथ रख के कि अरे अब तो देखा जाएगा जो होगा. No, I can't do that. If one thing is not working out, I need to figure out why it's not working out, and then figure out how I can make something else work. So I guess it's just this to-do attitude that I have, which probably comes in because I'm a Delhi girl. Delhi walas can't stay quiet. So I guess those struggles. And also, I am, the more I'm reading about it, I'm also child of refugees in that sense, right? My grandparents, both sides, came from what is now Pakistan, from undivided India, right? Back in the day. They were what was then, known as Lahore and all that area in undivided India, right? And they had to go through massive changes overnight in their lives to come to India and start their lives from scratch, from nothing. Wow. Literally, being abundant and living in big houses and having security and all of that. Suddenly one night, partition happens, and they have to travel, and they have to come to Delhi and settle down in a refugee colony with literally nothing.
Wow.
And there they built their, family upwards. So I guess that resilience kind of runs in the genes in that sense, right? Maybe that's how.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, your story, right from, the family background to you coming to the US and being resilient throughout fighting for this cause is really, really commendable. You also have this organization called Skilled Immigrants for America. Yeah. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, sure. Skilled Immigrants in America. We started it literally as a WhatsApp group back in the day, a Facebook group then, and then from one thing led to another. It became a huge advocacy organization, multiple campaigns we've run across, in the last many, many years. We were, Anirban Das, our founder, the main guy behind all of this. He was very instrumental in bringing H4EAD. He was there at the OMB meeting, which led to the formation of H4EAD, right? So that guy, and then from there, we, there's this funny campaign that we had we never really thought we'll become this successful when we started, because the idea was really just, we have to do something. We have to create this noise. We have to let people know that this is wrong, what's happening with us, and this awareness needs to be out there, right? So there was this one incident that I can share with you. We ran a letter campaign in 2017. And we were very happy कि अगर 10,000 letters भी हो जाएंगे तो it's going to be okay. The idea was to send multiple letters to all these members of Congress, to the VP, Speaker of the House, to the President, and all of that, right? That was the intention. And our goal was 100,000 भेजने हैं. A month, 2 months, 3 months, जितना भी time लगेगा, we'll send 100,000 letters to all these people. And guess what? Within 2 weeks, it caught like wildfire. We were able to send 110,000 letters to all these different, members of Congress and to the White House. In fact, I got a letter from the White House back recognizing that they've received the letter and acknowledging the fact that they are doing something about this issue.
Wow.
I even got a phone call once from the White House.
Wow.
So, I mean, we think we don't have power. We think nobody's watching. We think that whatever efforts we are putting in, nobody's going to do anything about it. But just try doing it and see the kind of wave it's going to create.
Wow. Yeah. I think that's one of the things that I have experienced as well. A lot of us keep our mouth shut thinking that कि या तो कुछ नहीं होगा या तो बिना बोले होगा.
Yeah.
Right. So it's simply a wrong mentality to be the more you ask, the more you push for it, the more you ask. And that's how the society is even built, right? It appreciates individualism. So the thing is, there are societies where an individualistic mentality is kind of looked down upon a little bit. But yahan pe, the more individual you are, the more you assert yourself and ask for what you want. It's actually celebrated for the most part.
Right. Yes, the power of speaking up. And this is exactly why I founded IndieXSpark. It's a platform where Indian Americans get a voice to express their success stories. Simon, we keep talking about representation matters. There's so many people around us who've done amazing, amazing work, but we never find out about their stories because their stories hit one news cycle and then just fades away with that. Right. And these are people who actually live in our neighborhoods, but we know nothing about them.
Right.
Right. So I created this platform. It's an in-person event last year where 5 speakers, I handpicked them from across the US. They came and they shared their successful stories, TED Talk style, not TikTok, TED Talk style, in front of an audience, right? Just so that we can create this amazing wave of inspiration and success stories that we don't hear about. We see them. From a distance. For example, we see Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai, Mindy Kaling. These are the people we, know about. But how many of you have actually met them and spoken to them and, shaken hands with them or known more about them, except for in person, right? Not from what you've seen on media or books. But then there's so many more people who are right there in front of you, who you can meet in person and, learn from. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's an amazing initiative. Let us know in any way, shape or form, if we can help. I'll be happy to support that initiative because more and more Indian voices need to come out for, everything that they are doing.
Absolutely. We have some very unique experiences here. We do some, we go through some amazingly unique experiences here. Plus we bring all these amazing different ideas to the ground. So why not celebrate all of us?
Yeah. There are a lot of people who are struggling on the H4 through a lot of mental turmoil. What's your advice to them?
Don't think of H4 as a curse. Think of it as a blessing. Anything that you have been wanting to do but couldn't do because, you had a certain job, you had certain other expectations that you had to take care of. Use this time to figure that side hustle. Who knows? You could be the next person on the billboard because of your photography skills. Who knows that?
You came here on an H4, and I'm sure there's a lot of struggles that you had to go through being unemployed and having to go through this struggle of starting all over. What kind of struggles were those?
See, I think number one struggle was to really become sellable in the market again. Because once you see that gap on your resume, how do you justify that gap, as a recruiter, and I'm sure many of you have dealt with recruiters, it's not easy to tell them that, hey, I wasn't working because there was a visa related issue. They don't give a damn. You have to be able to sell your skills in a way that they are able to recruit you. And I think in my case, that became a bit of a challenge initially. But as soon as I got into the job market, I was able to get over it very quickly too.
What got you the most frustrated about the H4?
Oh my God, the never ending wait. When is H4 EAD going to become a reality, or when will I ever get my green card so I can get on with my life? Because, H4, you cannot do anything at all, literally. Like I told you, right? If for the longest time I had to literally carry my husband with me to the MVC, right? To show them that, hey, I'm married to this man and he's here with me and please approve my driver's license. So that was super frustrating. Every single time I had to, take my husband with me. So he had to take time off from work just so that I could get my driver's license. Why? I could do it on my own.
What are some of the support systems that kind of supported you throughout the journey, especially during your H4 phase?
Oh my God. Literally an army of women. Literally, women, they lift each other up so much. And also, I think my husband, definitely kudos to him for, he dealt with a lot because, I have all this energy that I want to put in creatively out there. And if your energy is misbalanced like that, it can wreak havoc in a relationship, right? But I think he understood what I was really going through, and he was at the receiving end of it many a time, but he stuck around.
Nice. Okay. People talk about all the challenges of the H4, but there's also a certain aspect of the H4 that you can use as motivation for your longer term goals. Can you talk about that? What are those things that can be transformed into like a longer term motivation?
See, like I said earlier, you could create side hustles while you are on an H4. You could volunteer, all the, things you wanted to do. Maybe a dance class that you wanted to do. Maybe you wanted to volunteer for the Red Cross, or you wanted to go attend film festival in New York City, but could not do it because you had this job and the timings didn't work out. You could do it now. You could even go volunteer for them, right? So the avenues, so literally the world becomes your oyster. Nothing stops you. You can literally go and volunteer anywhere. So this inhibition, hey, this is my skill set and I cannot expand beyond that. That kind of gets a little jolt, because once you're in an H4, that shock, it motivates you to move in a different direction.
And then it's on you, because you have probably even more open opportunities. It's a blue ocean for you than your spouse, because your spouse needs to stay at that employer. You can do whatever the heck you want.
Absolutely. You can. I mean, of course, not taking away the mental turmoil of not earning, because that, I think, just sticks around in your head that, you're talented, you have the skill sets, but you just can't be in the job market and be earning money. I think bringing home a paycheck also not being able to bring a paycheck also weighs in a lot while being on H4.
As a woman, and there are so many immigrant women, not just on H4, like who come on F1 and all that. What do you think are the biggest mistakes that immigrant women do in the US, being naive, that cost them a lot of opportunity?
I think not just women, but immigrants in general, not knowing their rights. Okay, they need to know their rights. When you go for visa stamping, they give you a little booklet. How many of you have literally just thrown it in the dustbin? Please open it up and read that booklet. It has a lot of information, and join, groups online and see what people are doing and what it means to be speaking up. Go explore the world, because I think if you limit yourself within your communities, and if you limit yourself in a little bubble that you create for yourself, a little safety net, you don't expand then. But if you learn how to speak up, if you go and just explore the world around you, a lot more avenues open up for you.
Amidst all your resilient journey and you pushing hard for this cause of H4 EAD and yourself going through it as well, what is that one thing that always stayed in your mind, which kept reminding you that you're on the right path?
Oh, I was meeting such amazing people on my path. I was able to meet Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar
Wow.
And I met him one-on-one in a closed chamber, literally sat at his feet and spoke to him one-on-one for half an hour about green card backlog. Who in this world has had that opportunity? I have.
Wow.
Right? So I think I kept meeting the right kind of people that kept motivating me to just go out there and continue speaking about this.
इस पर उन्होंने क्या बोला?
उन्होंने बोला, मुझे बताओ मैं क्या करूं? He's like, you want me to talk to a certain senator? How do you want me to deal with this? I'm like, Gurudev, just give your Ashirwad. We need, we need this curse to be lifted off us.
Wow. It definitely needs a ton of Ashirwad at this point, I guess.
Yeah. So I guess that kept motivating me. I've met many people. Can't remember all of them right now, but this one definitely stands out.
Neha, you were standing up for this cause of H4 EAD and many other immigrant causes, not just after you got your green card, but even before that, as an immigrant, as a person on a temporary visa or an H4 yourself. कभी डर नहीं लगा?
बहुत डर लगा यार. I was very scared because, I remember one time, especially when I got featured by the BBC and NPR, I was like, holy cow, it's so easy to just Google things up these days, right? And what if people come and, do something to me, right? Or my family, right? Like, wo dar hamesha tha. Plus, I was getting trolled really badly on Twitter back then. For speaking up and all of that. So yes, dar lagta tha, but I'm a Delhi wali, so I have a very thick skin.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I think we both suffered from like a reasonable amount of trolling for doing the mistake of being the first in something. Thank you so much, Neha. Pleasure talking to you as always, and I'm sure people will be waiting for our next episode together.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. And I'm really excited for that summit that you're planning in New York City. I can't wait to attend that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's definitely going to benefit a lot of people.
Yep. See you there. Thank you.